What is up, guys? It is Joe. We are back. We're talking about the Cats. We're talking about specifically retaining one key player from last season heading into 2024-25. I know a lot of videos on here are about talking about the portal, who we want to bring in, different players. Guys, sometimes the best fits are the ones you already have. Today's video, we're talking about Arthur Kaluma and the likelihood that he returns to K-State basketball this coming season. Before I talk about Art, I've got a bunch of points I want to jump into. Let me tell you this. If you like K-State athletics, K-State basketball, K-State football, consider taking 3 to 5 seconds out of your day to hit that subscribe button. We are creeping closer to 2,000, and at 2,000, I am giving away one of these bad boys, a lavender quarter zip. I'll post the detailed giveaways as we cross that 1,900 to 2,000 threshold, and I don't want to sugarcoat it. Having more subscribers on the channel does help me out a lot. It helps me allocate more resources to the channel. It helps me be able to continue to put more time and invest to give back to you guys. So having that does help me out a lot, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that. I'm not going to try to beat around the bush, but if you feel like helping me out, be sure and consider subscribing. Guys, I'm going to jump in here. This is my second, maybe third time trying to record this video because both times have not come out the right way. I've gotten about halfway through the video, and then it kind of turns into more of a rant about why other people are wrong or why I'm right or whatever. That's not the way I want to put this. Let me say this first things first. If you disagree with me on this topic, that is A-okay. I'm not here to inform your decision to say you have to agree with me or you're wrong for feeling the way you do or you're right for feeling the way you do. I'm not trying to do any of that. The whole reason I started this channel is just to talk about my feelings about a specific player, about a specific team, about specific things. Today, I'm doing that with Arthur Kaluma. Now, basically 1 year ago today, it was more like 11 months, so I probably shouldn't say that, but I made a video talking about the likelihood of Keontae Johnson returning. I was wrong. I thought there was some motion returning to, whether it's a medical thing or something with Keontae. I thought there was a chance Keontae returned this season. Obviously, he didn't. It didn't work out. Today's video is about Arthur Kaluma, a guy that's in the same position, who's looking at the NBA draft, and he's considering his next move. I'm 0 for 1, so my stats aren't necessarily in the green, but today we're looking to get to 1-1, and hopefully my prediction is right. This video is not informed from Arthur Kaluma telling me any hidden information. It's not informed by K-State athletics or anybody on the coaching staff or on the team. It's none of that. This is just me as a passionate fan talking about what I think will happen. That being said, I could easily be wrong. So let's start here. Guys, I feel like Arthur Kaluma is trending towards coming back in 2024-25. I'm not going to sit here and say it's 100% yes or no because I don't really have any information on that, but it feels like the way K-State's been recruiting, Arthur Kaluma is becoming more of a priority to come back to K-State. Now, I know that might be a great thing for some of you, and I know that might be a negative thing for some of you because it feels like weirdly the fan base is split on Arthur Kaluma. I don't think it's a 50-50 thing. I don't think if you asked 10 K-State fans, 5 of them would say, yes, we want Kaluma. 5 of them would say no. I think it's more like 7-3, but the 3 are pretty loud and pretty pissed off. So you have to acknowledge them at least there. K-State absolutely needs a player like Arthur Kaluma back. The 2 main criticisms as to why people don't want Arthur back are basically 2 reasons. The first being, well, he wasn't bought in. Whatever that means to you, that's what I'm talking about. The second thing being, well, he turned the ball over. He wasn't great last year. We can get better. Guys, I'm going to start off with the second one before I jump into the first thing about buying in. Second thing first, believe it or not, that's the inverse of how we want to go. Arthur Kaluma in his stats, Arthur Kaluma in his numbers, the dude averaged 14-7 in the best basketball conference in America. I'm not sitting here to say that it's all a numbers game because some people watching this might be like, well, numbers are just that. He was the best player on a bad team, whatever the case is. Okay, I get that. If numbers don't matter, whatever. But the idea that Arthur Kaluma is going to come out next season on a roster that fields a guy like Doug McDaniel controlling the game, a guy like potentially Clifford Amore down low, a veteran version of Day-Day Ames, a guy like CJ Jones who can do whatever you ask of him. The idea that Arthur Kaluma is going to be the cut and copy same player he was last season, throw that out the window. That's ridiculous. K-State fans seem to do that, and I'm not saying everybody. I don't want to make it sound like everybody does, but we seem to all collectively do this each season where wherever the season ends, that's where the player is going to stay in our mind until we see them be better than that. It happened with Cam Carter. It happened with a couple guys last season. It happened with David Gasson. There's a lot of dudes on the team that just get this, here's where they ended, here's where they start. They're never going to improve in the offseason. It's incorrect. It's unfortunate. It's just the way that the human brain works. We have a hard time believing what we don't see. If we haven't figured out that Jerome Tang gets the best out of his players yet, I don't know what the heck we're doing. Arthur Kaluma is going to be leaps and bounds better than he was last season because of the spacing, because of the players around him, because of him taking another step in an offense where he doesn't have to be the number 1 player every single time on the court. Art played hero ball a lot last season, but if he didn't play hero ball or if it didn't work and we missed shots, we'd lose a lot of games. I'm not saying it's sustainable to win games, and Coach Tang himself said, hey, it's a miracle we won the games we did or we're in the games we did because we turned the ball over more than anybody else in the country. You look at a roster like that, Arthur Kaluma, Tyler Perry, Cam Carter, none of those guys are set up to take control of the game in the sense that, hey, you have to make the right decision at this right time. Now you have multiple guys in the starting lineup that can do that. CJ Jones, you have Doug McDaniel. That's the reason you go get good decision makers. Now you put pieces around them. So I would say this. People look at Art and say, well, 14-7, whatever. I mean, he can be a better player. He turns the ball over. Guys, if a blank player with a blank slate entered the transfer portal after averaging 14-7 in the Big 12, 16 of 16 teams would be interested in them. Absolutely. Arthur Kaluma, if he hit the portal, he's not going to. I think he's either going to go to the NBA or come back to K-State. My hope is that he comes back to K-State because he's a hell of a player. If Art hit the portal, 15 other teams would be interested in Arthur Kaluma from the Big 12 Conference. That's the reality. I mean, you look at guys like Kelvin Sampson at Houston, they'd be all over Art, and they would see what they could do with his ability. The reason this whole video came up is someone put out a tweet, and it's kind of a burner dude. I don't know if he has any logistics around him or any type of, I haven't really seen him before, so I don't want to make it sound like he doesn't know what he's talking about. I don't want to make it sound like he does. But he put out a tweet saying, I have heard Arthur Kaluma is coming back to Kansas State. I'll pop up a tweet somewhere here on the screen. I am over the moon about that possibility. Arthur Kaluma is not only one of the best players in the Big 12, not only one of the best power forwards in the country, but his game has so much left yet to be unlocked. His potential has already taken a giant step, but guys, he can be leaps and bounds better than he was last season. Art can get you 20 on any given night. You saw that last year. But when he's forcing himself to go for 20, when he's forcing himself to go for 20 and 10, that's where you see some bad shots, some bad decisions, and whatever else you want to say about that. Arthur Kaluma would be a hell of an addition. You look across the board. We overvalue other dudes in the portal at lower degrees of competition, and we undervalue our own guys. You take a guy that averaged 14-7 in the best basketball conference in America, and you compare that to a guy averaging, 11 or 10.5 and 6 at, North Dakota State. You look at that and say, okay, this guy, hey, he can shoot the basketball, he can do this. We start to talk ourselves into players as well as talk ourselves out of our own players. I think to an extent, and I mean this in the nice way possible because I want to be respectful of everybody and their opinions, but those that feel a certain way about Arthur Kaluma, I don't know that I trust your opinion about a ton of basketball knowledge. Arthur Kaluma is an NBA player. He is surrounding himself with NBA players. Last season, he had to be an NBA player plus because nobody else on the court knew how to manage the game, knew how to take control of the game. So you expect 10 times more than the player he has to be. This year, he can be the best player on the court without trying to be the best player on the court. That's the difference because you have a guy like Doug McDaniel. You have a guy like Dade Ames. You have a guy like CJ Jones. You consider the possibility of adding a guy like Baba Miller, who has unlimited upside. A guy like Clifford Amore, who would be one of the best centers in the Big 12. The spacing, the defense, the energy. Arthur Kaluma benefits from every single addition we've seen this season. And this is truly one of the best additions you could make. So you look at Michael Brown-Jones. That's the example of what we want to use. I'm not going to look at you and tell you that the move was made for him to commit to Ole Miss because of Mark Mitchell's crystal ball from Jason Scheer. Wow, that name is a mouthful. Jason Scheer. There we go. I'm not going to look at you and say that Art told the staff, hey, I'm coming back. Tell whoever else they have to come off the bench. That's not the case this goes. This staff is putting the best roster together regardless of whose name it is, regardless of past experience. That's what we're looking for. And you consider the matchups that he'd be going against. Like, the best player on the court next year would guard Clifford Amore or would guard Doug McDaniel. It could guard Dade Ames. You would want to tell me that there's multiple players that you would mention before Arthur Kaluma, and we'd expect Art to be the same player he was last year. No way. Art was the top of the scouting report for every team in the country that faced K-State last season. That's different. You have to talk about, okay, Doug McDaniel's going to look for, Clifford Amore on a roll to the basket, whoever's the center. I know there isn't a center yet in Manhattan, but that's the idea. Arthur Kaluma is the, hey, this guy could beat us potential. That's the idea that other teams would look at Art. And you want to tell me that an NBA player like Arthur Kaluma, because he is an NBA player, whether you like to agree or not, Art is an NBA player. You want to tell me that we're going to leave an NBA player as like, he could beat us, we'll see what happens. That is a crazy assessment. Arthur Kaluma can be the best player in the Big 12. He can be the best player on our team, but we are not demanding him to be that. That's the difference. So a couple quick thoughts I want to mention here real quick. Let me talk about the buy-in thing. Guys, we got to drop this damn buy-in thing. We got to drop it. Well, Art didn't buy in last season. Art didn't. Yeah, that lasted for about 2 games and the very last game of the season against Iowa. Straight up, it did. The whole, Art didn't buy in. He didn't put his effort out there. He didn't sacrifice. The whole buy-in thing was drastically ran with our fan base so much longer than it ever needed to be. Straight up. Coach Tang commended the dude after the Iowa game and said, look what Arthur Kaluma did. He got his teammates to fall in love with the person he is. And somehow we're on the sidelines going, boo, Art sucks. We hate Art. That's ridiculous. So all I'm saying is, you can feel a certain way about a player. You can disagree with the coaching staff. You can disagree with the player themselves, but you have to open your eyes at some point. The whole Art didn't buy in. Art didn't try. Art wasn't. Guys, the team lost 8 games in a row. Not one player on that squad was bought in the entire season. Whether you want to say it or not, hey, I like this guy, so he was bought in. That's not the case. Every single player had a lapse in effort, a lapse in judgment. But to sit here and say that Arthur Kaluma would be the exact same player next year, that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. So maybe it's a situation where we want to just say, well, we need to get Art out of town. We got to do this. No. What are we doing? It is crazy to me to see so many fans be on the fence about Arthur Kaluma. You have the opportunity to bring a guy that is a all Big 12 honorable mention, a 14-7 type guy, back to your team as a senior. When you already know that he's going to take another massive step forward, and this time he's not forcing himself to be the best player on the court. That's not the way it goes. It's important to understand that players are going to be different each and every season. Even the people you love coming back next year are going to be different players. They're going to be different people. Genuinely, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, the coaching staff wouldn't sign up for another year of Arthur Kaluma if he was that type of guy, that non-buy-in guy. They wouldn't sign up for that. And don't say, well, you can't just kick a kid off the team. If he wants to be there, he's there. Guys, the way the NIL and the transfer portal works right now, you can have auditions every single week for a different player in your team. You can ask, hey, buddy, we got to move on from you. Not Buddy Rich, but Buddy as a general player. If Art were toxic, if Art were an issue, whatever the case is, he wouldn't be welcomed back with open arms among the coaching staff. I, for one, like to trust the coaching staff. I, for one, like to trust my eyes. I like the idea of having a 6'8", 225-pound power forward that is a size, athleticism mismatch against everybody in the conference. And oh yeah, he's going up as the 3rd or 4th primary scoring option at Kansas State. Yeah, I would like that on my team, personally. You can try to sell me whoever you want at the power forward position, at the 4 position, at the 3 position, whatever you want. Guys, the addition of Arthur Kaluma would be leaps and bounds better than whoever is going to be mentioned. People are high on Quitter Copeland. People are high on Dre Davis. I will take Arthur Kaluma because he knows the system, he knows what's expected of him, and he doesn't have to be the number one guy at all times. This is a dude that could have another massive season for K-State, and it's only scratching the surface as is. So I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything out there. I don't want to just dunk on fans that don't feel like Art should be back, but it is kind of laughable to me to not welcome the guy back. My theory has always been find 3 NBA players and the rest of the team find the right developmental guys around them, and you'll win a championship, or you'll have the ability to win a championship. Coach Tang's first year, you had 2.5. You had Keontae, you had Keese, and then when Quan was in his peak form, he was a half of an NBA player just because he hadn't come into his full yet. He wasn't playing 30 minutes a game. He would be fouling, he'd do different things. It's ridiculous for us to turn away Arthur Kaluma or be like, we don't want him back. That is the wrong choice. Arthur Kaluma will show up big, especially on the roster that includes Doug McDaniel, a guy that has the opportunity to decide, hey, Art, I love you. You're doing too much right now. I will decide where the basketball goes. If you're open, I'll hit you, but don't do too much. That's the thing that people forget. Art doesn't come back and it's the same situation. Every single year, something's going to change. Players are going to change. People are going to change temperaments. People are going to change their abilities. Arthur Kaluma steps back on the court for Kansas State as one of the best players in the Big 12, and we would be fools to turn him away. I believe, as it sits right now, I can't even see the date. It's too dark in this room to see it. K-State will have Arthur Kaluma back for his senior season. Those are my thoughts on Arthur Kaluma. I expect him to be back, and I am eagerly anticipating the day when that announcement is made. If that announcement is made, if not, to hell with this video. I forgot everything I said already. Thank you guys so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. I will talk to you soon. Go Cats.